Welcome back, guys, as we are now getting ready to head to our first of the famous city circuits in Formula 1 2019 as we're getting ready to head to Azerbaijan and the Baku street circuit. This is a bit of a tighter circuit. Obviously, city circuits, a lot of walls, a lot of sharp 90-degree corners, but also has a massive back straight. But as we take a look, we are down one of our developments. We have one of them come through, the other one failed, but looks like we're going to have a pretty dry race coming up. So we get that central under tray up, but some rear downforce we're going to be missing out on that we were really hoping to have, so we'd be able to run a little lower downforce setup on this system with the very long straights. And as it's a power circuit, we're looking to put in a couple new parts of the engines. So we're going to go ahead and slap those guys in there before we head to the track and the first practices. We really just want a very healthy engine setup before we head out for this long power circuit.
Welcome to qualifying in the Republic of Azerbaijan. The teams are making their last-minute adjustments before the lights go green, and the fight for pole position can get underway. This is the kind of track that eats rear tyres for breakfast, or so I'm told by more experienced drivers than myself.
No matter how good a driver is at managing their throttle application to limit rear slip, they can't always overcome a car that's inherently bad at looking after its rear tyres. Here we have a lot of low-speed corner exits, which means a whole load of energy, heat and tyre wear.
Alright, so here we are in the garage for qualifying at Baku. I'm going to do a couple little tweaks before we head out to the course to kind of dial the car in the way we like it. Obviously, we're going to be going out on the softs. We've dialed the wings back. Usually starts off at a 6.6. We've rolled it to a 4.4 to try and take advantage of those straights. And we're going to really kind of have the front brake bias pretty high in a lot of these corners, as it's really loaded up into these hard braking zone. But here we are starting our first flying lap for a little tour of the circuit. It's a short run into turn one off the start, but you have that huge straightaway to build up speed. And you see these heavy braking zones as you head into these tight 90-degree corners of the first sector. The first sector is a good little mix. Got those couple tight 90-degree corners, but also has some straights to work with. We are very heavy on adjustments and in-lap tweaks around this circuit. As we start to head to the end of Sector 1 and into Sector 2, we are going to be doing a lot of dialing back our fuel flow and our ERS deployment, as there's not a lot of acceleration zones. That's a lot of tight, twisty corners. So we can try and save up fuel and ERS deployment to utilize on the long back straight coming up. So here we are coming into the castle section, which is very dangerous. These walls come up on you very quick. It's a very interesting little tight zigzaggy section as you head right along the castle walls, and we start to come down the next high-speed section, getting ready to dial in these last couple tight corners before we head down the final big long straight. So down the hill into another hard braking zone, 90-degree left-hander, and now we are flat out basically all the way to the end. You've really got to nail these corners, otherwise you can very easily swing wide into that left wall off that final right-hander. But this is what we are saving up all that deployment, running the engine in a rich fuel mode for this long straight. And so there we are crossing the line, 143.7, so we'll drop back into the garage and see that we're dead last. So as we get to the last couple minutes of the qualifying session, we've let the track kind of rubber in. We're going to go ahead and hop out for our last flying lap as we come to the last couple of corners here. And we're up about a quarter of a second coming into this last sector. But for some reason, We don't quite get as good of a run through as we did last time. You see, we're just bleeding time coming through this sector, and we're not even a half a tenth up at this point. And in fact, as we cross the line, we are going to be about a half a tenth behind our old time. So our first time is the best we're going to do in Q1. We are going to be starting this race from the very, very back of the grid. So there you see the Q1 times. Obviously, those are going to switch up a little bit. We finished behind our teammate, who is going to be in 17th. He finished about 7/10 up on us.
Good afternoon and welcome to Baku. This was the arena, if you think back to 2017, of one of the most eventful races of modern history, with controversy behind the safety car, last-second overtakes, and a historic podium for Williams and for Lance Stroll. So let's find out what lies in store for us this year. It's time for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. The Baku city circuit measures roughly 6 kilometers and is made up of 20 corners and 2 DRS zones. The circuit winds around the narrow city, through the old town, and even brushes against the city's medieval walls. However, as beautiful as the setting is, this track is also a ferocious technical challenge, where the smallest of mistakes could lead to catastrophic consequences for all of our drivers. Anthony Davidson joins me again for the race today. As with all the drivers at this level, they have a lot of ambition, but Formula One's a daunting step up from any other series, so expectations are high right from the start.
And this is something that has ended the career of many a young driver, as that leap up to Formula One proves to be too much. But luckily in this case, I'd say they're doing a good solid job, and the risk the team took in signing them is definitely starting to pay off.
Before we begin, let's take a quick look at the grid lineup for today's race. Good job yesterday from Valtteri Bottas. The Finn starts from pole position, and Lewis Hamilton completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Leclerc, Vettel, Pierre Gasly, and Verstappen, Weber, Raikkonen, Perez, and Devon Butler, Stroll, Ricciardo, Nico Hülkenberg, and Sainz, Grosjean, Albon, George Russell, and Kevin Magnussen, Norris, and old-timer. Now it's almost time to lights out, so let's go down to the track.
Back of the grid. Let's see if we can push on from here.
All right, here we are on the grid, dropping into our strategy planning session. So it looks like we are going to have the options between a 1 and a 2 stop. Obviously, the 2 stop is going to be for cars with significant pace, which we do not have. So we're going to go from the mediums to the hards. And we get ready to get off the line here as well as we can. It's a very short run, as I said, into turn 1. So the field gets very bunched up. We're going to try and make up some significant positions while keeping our front wing lovingly attached to the front of our car. So there we are, diving up the inside, picking up a couple positions. One more as we head into turn 2, and we give a little love tap to our teammate. But there we are. We've made up some spots. Again, this is race number 4, and we have that team goal of coming in 14th or better that we had 2 races to complete. So last race we missed out on it with another 15th place. So here we are again trying to get that bonus 600 R&D points by coming in 14th. So we got to make up 2 positions from where we're at right now as we kind of settle into the train and get comfortable getting through this circuit. We dial back the fuel mix and ERS deployments pretty early on. Usually off the start of a race you're going to run it in higher mixtures just to try and get as much as you can out of it the first couple of laps, but with everyone bunched up we're going to try and not burn too much. So we're going to dial it up as we get ready to head down the straights and see if we can't pick up some positions before the DRS is enabled on lap 3. Now, one thing to be very careful of coming through this high-speed sector, on newer tires it's not as big of an issue, but dirty air and losing that front downforce, especially through this little left-right section, if you saw in my throttle input, there was a little bit of a lift coming through that area that's usually pretty easy flat out if you have the line. But losing that little bit of extra downforce by being in that turbulent, dirty air means we got to make sure not to understeer off the wall. So we're going to look inside our teammate, outbrake him. We're going to go a little deep, but we're going to get that pass completed going into turn one. And in fact, Grosjean followed him through and lock up and almost meet the barrier, which would have been just an awful thing to do on lap 2, ruin our race, have to come in for a new wing. But now Grosjean's going to look down to the inside of us, so we're going to give him space, not pinch him off into the barrier, go too wide, but we're going to go a little bit earlier on the power around the outside of him, get that position back, and hold him off. And so we kind of settled into rhythm. We're going to jump ahead here to lap 10. As we are closing down on Nico Hülkenberg using DRS into that turn 1. A little bit of a lockup again. It's very easy to get that overspeed. In fact, he goes for the switchback and gets back down the inside of us. So we are going to battle him. But like he switched us back in turn 1, we're going to go to switch back in turn 2. Brake a little earlier, cut back to the inside, get on the power a little before him so we can get a better run down that straight. And there we go. Right through him, and we can see Ricciardo and Sainz battling ahead of us. But here we are in 13th position, setting ourselves up very nicely to get that R&D bonus at the end of the race. And here we are coming back through the slower sections. Hülkenberg filling up our mirrors right on our tail as we take a little peek back to him as we get ready to head towards the castle section. Sainz and Ricciardo seem to have sorted their battle out a little bit and settled it down just to come through this tight little sector. And I'm sure they'll start fighting each other as soon as we get back down to the back straight one more time. And here we are back on the throttle in this area. Another section where you can run it flat out very easily. Having a good line though is crucial to having good times through there. And there's a very tricky braking zone. Coming down the hill there, a little bit of a crest as you start to hit the turn in. So it's one that in practice sessions and as I was running time trials on this track, I definitely would brake late, hit the wall from time to time. So it's definitely something you got to practice up at. But here we are. Hülkenberg is certainly going to have DRS on us down this long straight. So we are dialing up our ERS deployment and our fuel mix to try and defend this position as much as we can. Heading into the long braking zone of turn 1. So we're going to let him have the outside, so we can cover off the inside there as we get the radio from our engineer that it is time to come into the pits at the end of this lap. So we're going to push our tires as hard as we can, and I'm sure Hülkenberg is going to make us push our tires because he is right behind us, putting a lot of pressure on us coming through this first sector here. And as our tires are starting to go off a little bit before we head to the hards, we are just kind of doing everything we can to keep from locking up, heading into corners, and keep from spinning up the tires on these slow corner exits, which is very easy to do, to step on the power a little too strong and get wheel spin, where if you're lucky, you're burning your tires, and if you're unlucky, you're going to end up facing the wrong way down the track. And here you are. You can see from this front wing cam just how close we swing by these barriers to try and straighten out those corners through that castle section up that fairly steep hill. Something really the first couple times you're learning the circuit, you're very slow through there, but it's something that you really have to get a feel for, and you can really pick up a lot of time if you have a good line through that area. And here we are down the last heavy braking zone before we head into the last main straight. And we've still got Hülkenberg right behind us, and of course, since we're coming in this lap, he's going to be getting by us. But our goal is to make up as much time as we can, but we're not going to purposefully hold him up. So we stay to the inside, and right as we start to hit the pit lane braking zone, you see him go flying by us. We go through that little chicane to slow us down, and hit our marks, drop in the pit speed limiter as we are dropping right into the pit lane. We came in P14 as we were passed right before heading in there. And a few other teams are making their stops onto the hards as well, the same lap we are. So that is going to be our competition for the rest of this race as we get back out onto the track, up to speed. And we ran in a bit of clear air, and we're going to jump ahead here to lap 17 of 26 in this 50% race distance. So we have 9 laps here to go, and there it is after all the pit stops have shaken out. P14, and Hulkenberg still right behind us. He went another lap longer than us, and we came out just ahead of him after the pit stops, and now we are trying to chase down this group ahead of us while simultaneously fending them off. You can see as we come through this castle section, my fuel mix and ERS deployment are lean fuel mixture, low ERS. Try and save as much as we can through these sections where power is not a big issue. And there you go, you see I dial it up for the next steps as we head to this first high speed area, and Nico's right on our tail here. He's actually having a look to the inside, which is a very dangerous braking zone there. And we really have to get hard on the brakes and not let him push us into the barrier, nor cut him off into the barrier. And so here we are dialing up to the rich fuel mix and the high ERS deployment mode as we get ready to make a run. We are right behind him through the DRS detection zone. We're actually going to get by him before the activation, so not only are we going to use that to get through him, we are going to try and make a little ground, but he tucks into the slipstream and stays pretty tight on our tail as we get ready to head into the braking zone of turn 1. And here we are battling him, both on our hard tires. Fairly similar life. He's got slightly fresher tires, but it's not a big, huge deal there. But this is for P14. This is for our bonus. So we have to hold him off. Otherwise, we will fail another team objective. And it's really comes down to utilizing and managing both the fuel and DRS on this track. You really want to be able to run in those high deployment modes down that long straight. There are some passing zones through the slower second sector, but they're not great passing zones, so it is a defendable position on track. As you see, I stepped on the power a little bit too early there, swung the tail end out, burned the rear tires a little bit more. These harder compounds can stand that a little bit better than the softer compounds. You won't chew them up as much. As you can see, heading in this braking zone, he is not going to try and swing through us this time. He's going to think it a little better as we dial up our rich mix, getting ready to come down the long straight.
Gap to car in front is 4.6 seconds.
As there is plenty of slipstream and DRS opportunity down this straight to make up pretty significant gaps to the car ahead. As long as you're within that 1 second through the DRS detection, you can really reel in that car in front of you. And as you can see, he is closing in on us. Those proximity arrows are getting brighter and brighter, but he is not quite close enough to make a pass on us coming into turn 1. So we are going to get on the brakes early and keep him behind. And here we are jumping a couple more laps ahead. Lap 20, we've got 6 laps to go, and he is right up behind us. And just like we got him earlier, he is going to get us this time. So we're going to tuck in, grab slipstream, see which way he chooses to defend, because we are going to try and outbrake him as we get down the inside, and we just kind of nudge him, squeeze him to the outside, but we managed to get him back through braking better than him. They're a little bit more daring coming into there, and that's really where the high speeds that you start your braking with allows you to run very high brake pressures and a lot of front brake bias, because you're throwing a ton of weight on there. And in the qualifying, I found I had to manage my brake bias even a bunch, as some of these slower corners you would lock up the softer compounds if you had higher brake bias forward without that downforce to keep it in. So not only were you managing your ERS deployment and your fuel mixture, you're also doing a lot of management of the brake bias. Now for the race, I pretty much settled into a more conservative and consistent build with the brakes, so I kept the brake bias pretty level throughout the race, unless I felt the tires start to react, like the tail end of the medium stint. I had a few instances where I had to kind of tweak that. But really, this was a race that was very heavy on management of our fuel and ERS deployment. Because the long straight in the higher ERS deployment modes is capable of burning a significant percentage of what your energy store holds. So you really have to counteract that by running in very low deployment modes during the slower sections of the race and utilize as much of that regenerative braking as you can. But here we go, Hulkenberg again getting a run on us, coming down the main straight into turn 1. Can we get him again under braking? He swings to the outside to cover it. He turns in a little early on us. We have a little bit of a side wheel-to-wheel tap. And we kind of nudge him out. A little bit of a cheeky move there, but we want that spot. And if he's going to try and lunge ahead of us, we're going to dive right to the inside of him. So we do pick up a warning from race officials on that one. We did get a little bit of a finger wagged at us. But we've got that position, and it's enabled now Grosjean to catch up, and now they are going to start battling a little bit, which hopefully is going to give me a little bit of time to kind of catch my breath and not be heavy under attack. We're on lap 22 here. We've got about 4 laps left in this race. Really important to get these last 2 corners really correct, because it's got a huge straight after, and if you're slow out of those last 2 corners, it really costs you down the rest of this straight. But as you can see, we're not quite as hard and aggressive on the brakes into that zone. We're trying to conserve the tires a little bit more to have a little bit of extra life in them whilst these two are battling behind me. As long as they're fighting, we don't have to push quite as hard. I mean, we definitely still want to be turning in good lap times, because they are going to run up on us, especially once they get sorted out coming down these straights. You see Hulkenberg getting another run on us, is going to pull side by side, get a little ahead, but we're just that bit more daring than he is on the brakes coming into those sections. We're going to kind of settle in here. A few more laps to go. Keep an eye on our mirrors as we run through the city streets. And they continue to battle behind us. You see the Toro Rosso of what appears to be Alex Albon, our other rival, our selected rival, up against us. Well, selected because he was the only option when we had to pick a second up.
The team are trying everything they can think of, but they're not optimistic. Just keep at it, do your best. That's all we can ask.
And there you see news from our race engineer: gearbox issues. We have lost 4th gear. So we have to kind of over-rev 3rd gear, and it jumps to 5th. So now, as we get onto these acceleration zones, it is a massive pain to get on the power. Losing 4th gear is huge, as a lot of these corners drop you down to 4th. In this case now we have to go down to 3rd gear to really start to not bog down on the acceleration. That allows this group behind us to start to reel us in a little bit more. But I knew it. This high wear on the gearbox had the chance to be an issue, and it's shown up late in this race. We have a chance to defend P14, and we're holding that down, but we're going to be losing time now as the gearbox is starting to protest to the way we've pushed it hard in trying to get as much as we can out of this car. And now really it's not such a bad thing that the gearbox is starting to go off. As you see, our slow exit there made us give up the position, but we are not quitting that easily. We were going to battle around trying and getting that position back. So we go around the outside of him down the next straight, and we attempt to hold this group off. We're trying to make our car as wide as we can. But as I was saying, this race is not such a bad race for us to be knowing that the gearbox is finally going, because next race will be Spain, and then the race following that is going to be Monaco. As you see, we actually got fourth gear back there, so now we have a much better chance to try and defend our position one more time. So thank God. But you definitely don't want to be taking grid penalties at Monaco. Like, that's the one place you absolutely don't want to. So we are definitely going to be taking our gearbox penalty for next week's race in Spain. But now, for whatever reason, as we headed in the last couple of laps here, I got my fourth gear back, and all of a sudden I was able to open up a gap to the cars behind me. Now, I don't know whether they were kind of squabbling behind, but I really kind of opened up quite a gap, and was able to run it as we jump ahead to the final lap. Magnussen is just outside of a second of us, so he's kind of managed to get clear of the battle again, and he's going to try and chase us down, but we have saved enough fuel and we've saved plenty of ERS deployment to let this car really run down these last couple of straights, as we just need to defend down that one more long lunge where if we can keep him outside of a second of us, he won't get DRS, and that'll make that defense much, much easier. So let's see where we are crossing the timing line. 0.749. So he is 3/4 back. He is going to be in DRS range. So we are going to be paying a lot of attention to those proximity arrows and looking in our mirrors as much as we can, as he's about to activate DRS, and we are pushing as much as we can, but he's not going to have quite the legs to catch up to us. We cross the line, P14, our best finish so far of the season, and we've settled out and gotten that team goal. So we're going to have that extra 600 R&D points to be playing around with.
Anthony Davidson, what helped them deliver this result, do you think?
I'd say it was down once again to good, consistent driving, nailing the corners, working to the track conditions, and perfecting the team's strategies. They got all of these things right today, and the results speak for themselves.
And I can see the drivers starting to approach the podium for the victory celebrations. A real team victory today. Everybody played their part. Congratulations then to Mercedes, your race winners today. So, let's review the drivers' standings. It wasn't the best weekend for our championship leader, and their advantage at the top has been reduced. Let's focus on the driver of the day. Anthony Davidson, who do you pick?
I think for driver of the day, I'd probably pick Lando Norris. He lived up to every inch of his reputation today, and I think he'll be going home, quite rightly, a bit proud of himself.
Let's move on to the constructors. Mercedes continue to extend their lead. Meanwhile, Toro Rosso's strong weekend allows them to continue their march up the table. I'm equal parts exhausted and elated with this weekend of Formula One. Be sure to join us for the next one.
Amazing performance out there. I'm sure you're pretty happy with that. Some excellent overtaking moves from your former teammate today. Did he learn some of them from you?
Hopefully with this car and this team, I still have a few lessons to teach him.
Did you struggle to get through all that traffic today?
There wasn't no struggle. I was just pushing as hard as I could.
It's safe to say you're smashing everyone's expectations, isn't it?
Well, you know, F1, it's team sport, and we all put a ton of effort in.
It wasn't the cleanest race today, was it?
Yeah, we took a lot of little bumps and grinds. It felt like I was an idiot magnet today, which apparently gives me a massive rep decrease.
Appreciate your time.
Well, I just called all the rest of the teams on the grid idiots, so that was kind of fun. And so here we are checking out the rivalry breakdown. Obviously, our first rival is our teammate, George Russell, because we always want to be outperforming him, and we've been pretty consistently doing that. Few occasions where he's nudged us, but we take a pretty significant lead against him there. Our other rival was our only other choice when we went to select rivals for the first time, which is Alex Albon in the Toro Rosso, which is another one of those bottom field teams, but their car is still significantly better than ours. They'll be one of the first that we catch up with when we start upgrading, so we are kind of lagging behind in the battle with him as well. But we managed to get past him this race, so we managed to pick up a couple points here and there. And so here we are getting our resource points, and there you see that 600 point team goals bonus. That's going to give us a nice chunk of R&D points to play around with. And there you see the impact of me calling everybody else idiots. Nobody likes me right now. So any goodwill I had going with other teams, not right now, but hey, we got our elbows out a little bit, Rubbin's racing, and they kind of nudged into us a bit.
That's a great result. You did really well. I don't think we can have any complaints with that performance.
And here we are with another factor of the F1 2019 game, contract renegotiation. We are 4 races in, and we have our first opportunity to renegotiate our contract based on our performance and our current value to the team. So our old contract, we had expected qualifying and race
Here we can
positions of
adjust
19th, and we were the second driver in the team
ambitiously
order.
we set our targets, the more willing the team will be to give us better perks. We'll have a few chances to suggest a deal, but we need to be careful. If a proposed contract exceeds your value to the team, it will be rejected, and too many attempts will leave us stuck with the original offer.
All right, so we get to play around with some of the portions of our contract that each have their own little tweaks and values, and we're trying to get that contract value to match with our value. So one of the things we're definitely going to want to do is get upgrade speed as much as we can, give it the maximum out. They now are going to expect us to qualify 18th and finish 15th, so it's going to go up, but we are going to be counted as the first driver in our team order. We do have the simultaneous development upgrade maxed as well. And
Alright,
our
the terms
first
been
negotiation, we
agreed. All that's
pretty
left is
much
to sign the
nail it.
paperwork. You'll be on this new deal from the next race weekend.
I thought for sure that upgrade speed was going to be asking a little much, but hey, there we go. And so through that repurchase, we're going to have at least one new part coming for Spain. The one that failed before. So we're going to pop into our R&D tree and see what we want to go with. We've got 1,200 points here to spend. So let's see what we can get going into Spain. So we're taking a peek at where we're at in the aero development on the R&D chart and seeing kind of what's ahead of us. Looks like front downforce and rear. We have a rear downforce in action right now, so we're going to add a front downforce development, and hopefully that can help us going as well. We're going to take a peek at what the next major is. There's a engine cover redesign for the next major coming up, but we are going to continue with our minors since we haven't upgraded that. Got enough points for that major. And we're going to purchase that intercooler positioning for our chassis development, so we want to keep that going as well. And we have just 220 points left, so we aren't going to be able to quite afford anything there. And so hopefully we'll have a good little jump as we get ready to head into Spain. But as you can see, our gearbox 74% wear at only 4 of these 6 races to get our swap unpenalized. So going into the next race, we will be taking a new gearbox, and we're also planning on taking a full new set of engine components as well. So our grid penalties from the gearbox penalty will basically put us at the back of the grid regardless, so we may as well get a whole new set of parts to work with. Well, thank you for joining me once again as we continue to crawl our car up the grid and continue to reel in the teams ahead of us as we work our way closer and closer to contending with that midfield battle. And hopefully the next place we'll do some battle at is Barcelona, Spain. See you guys next time.